carried on board every ship that intends to load grain, is an appendix to the ship's stability information book. The grain loading manual must meet the requirements of the International Grain Code. The manual provides explanatory notes and a worked example of grain stability calculations to help the ship's personnel to fully understand the calculations. Complete stability and longitudinal strength outputs are given for a range of typical loading conditions. The first step, before any grain calculations are done, is to calculate the metacentric height for the loaded ship in the intact condition, ignoring the potential movement of grain. This has to be greater than 0.3 meters. If it is not, then a revised loading arrangement has to be found which does satisfy this criterion. Following that step, the volumetric healing moments, VHMs, are found for each hold. VHMs, sometimes called mean shifting moments, are tabulated for each hold over a full range of filling levels. The values are based on an assumed surface grain shift of 15 degrees for a full compartment and 25 degrees for a partially full compartment. The VHMs for all loaded holes are added together, then corrected for the stowage factor to give the actual corrected grain healing moment. This is then compared to the maximum allowable grain healing moment given in the manual. If the actual grain healing moment is less than the maximum allowable grain healing moment, the grain stability condition is satisfactory, subject to the heel and residual stability criteria being met. The maximum angle of heel due to grain shift must not be more than 12 degrees, and, provided the minimum residual dynamic stability given by the statical stability diagram is satisfactory, then the ship will be safely loaded. The International Grain Code requires the master to load their ship safely. This requires holds that are shown filled in the loading plan must have all spaces on the deck and the ends of the holes as far as possible trimmed to minimize the effect of grain shifting. The number of partly filled holes should be kept to a minimum. After loading, all free grain surfaces in partly filled holes must be trimmed level. The grain loading manual calculations will show whether the proposed loading arrangement meets the stability criteria. Loading spouts at most loading ports cannot completely fill the ends of the holes. This causes a reduction in the ship's stability, because the grain can move in those areas. Modern bulk carriers are defined as being specially suitable, and therefore have a dispensation not to have to trim cargo ends. Some bulk carriers have stools at the part of the transverse bulkheads, which avoid this untrimmed ends problem. The ship must be upright before sailing. There may be a requirement to take on ballast during the voyage to keep sufficient stability as fuel is consumed.